Hi guys, it's Mr. Jones. Welcome to EPS. This is my first screencast, so you guys are going to have to bear with me. There's probably going to be a lot of stuttering and a lot of uhs, but we'll talk a little bit about what is science. So the first thing we're going to do is define science. We're going to talk about problem solving and the problem solving steps, talk about the scientific method, and then designing a good experiment. So if you guys watch this link video, it'll be with Hank Green. He's one of my favorite. He makes really understanding science a lot easier, so I like to reference him a lot. Our first thing is defining science. So science actually means knowing. So we can kind of break it down into different fields, into different topics, into different ways we investigate things. But really, pure science is just observing and researching things. Anything you observe, whether you grab a clam and dissect it and find out all the parts and discover what they do, or whether you watch an object fall or move through the night sky, how do those things work? This is just observation. This is just discovering new properties and how things work and how things combine together. Doesn't have a lot of everyday use, but it does combine with other people's ideas to give us kind of a body of knowledge or an understanding of how the world works. What's great about that is it leads to what we call applied science, and applied science is technology. So if you notice, pretty much your everyday life is just surrounded by technologies. Without understanding those, you would think, well, hey, they might be magic. How do lights work? How does your cell phone work? How does a computer work? Those things are amazing pieces of technology that started out by people asking some questions about how does electricity work, or why do electrons move through electric fields, or how do we build different components that can work together to make complex machinery. So pure science is the basis that allows us to apply those ideas to make things practical. So I kind of have a list of some different things here, and this is one of thousands or even millions of examples of things that you could investigate. So genetics, maybe the study of DNA or genes, or studying fruit flies and how they have different traits or characteristics. What is the point of that? What do we learn by studying the structure of DNA, or what do we learn by finding out why you look like your parents or have a certain thing? Well, that leads to a lot of things. So our understanding of Watson and Crick, or even people who probably didn't get credit for learning about DNA, female scientists who were kind of shoved under the carpet for many years. They taught us about what is DNA as being the hold, or the keeping of genetic code. What has that led to? Well, we can now cure disease. We can discover whether different birth defects or different things can be treated. We can apply that to forensic science. We can use DNA testing and DNA fingerprinting and blood samples to identify somebody who committed a crime. GMOs, okay, GMOs, genetically modified organisms, things that have genes that have been inserted and taken away, like Roundup Ready soybeans. Okay, how come they don't die when we spray them with a crop spray that would normally kill all the plants? So these are all here examples that we'll talk about in class, things that in everyday sense we probably don't use atomic theory very much, but I certainly think the movement of electrons and how we can produce light and electricity and send in information in the form of waves and electromagnetism to give information to computers and cell phones and satellites, these are all things that have come from studying different fields of science. So the applied part is the technologies that we take for granted today, all the things around us that help us, make life easier. So we can break down science into fields. Of course, you can study life science. You can learn about living things and how they work together. So I like to teach biology and A&P, but in college I took all these different classes, or not all of them, but I took a lot. So botany is about plants, and microbiology is about little microscopic things that we had no idea. A couple hundred years ago, we had no idea that there was things below what we could see. Histology is about tissues. Zoology is about animals. Entomology is just about a particular animal, insects. So sometimes students even think, is an insect an animal? Well, sure it is. And we'll talk about that, especially in biology. Earth science, you can study Earth and space, the movement of things, why storms happen, how we can predict and model different things. We can learn Earth processes, how and why we can predict when things will happen. So we can study the Earth itself, volcanoes, earthquakes. We can study weather. We can study the movement of astronomical bodies, the fact that our universe is expanding, the fact that we can measure the redshift of different galaxies and determine that our universe is ever expanding. And then, of course, things like oceanography is kind of like a blend. We can learn about the ocean, plate tectonics, the Mariner Trench, and other things. So we can combine that with life science. So sciences are not independent, they're interdependent. They depend on one another. So in this class, we talk about physical science. Okay, it's the study of matter and energy and the interactions of things at really kind of the small level, and then we scale things up in physics. So in chemistry, we talk about atoms and molecules and chemical reactions, and we talk about the nature of the atom. And we talk about how the atom has evolved, or at least our model of it, because it's so small, we haven't really got a great picture of it ever. So we simply have to model things. So that's part of science, is modeling things to make them practical or usable. So our model of the atom has really changed a lot, and that's one of the first things we'll talk about in this class. Is we're going to study matter, okay? Atoms, elements, electrons, protons, and neutrons, all kinds of various things. So physical science is all about chemistry and physics, and we usually spend about a semester on chemistry and about a semester on physics. My favorite thing, problem solving. A lot of people wouldn't say problem solving is their favorite thing, but I always talk about the 4 steps of problem solving: identify, plan, execute, and evaluate. So what do I mean? Okay, anytime I solve a problem, or anytime we solve a problem in our everyday lives, we use a set of problem solving methods. And as you get older, you learn that problems can be pretty complex, and you have to do a lot of problem solving. And some problems are really, really simple, like the light bulb didn't turn on. I flipped the switch this morning and no light. Well, probably the light bulb's out. Okay, what do? Well, we grab a new light bulb, screw it in. Did the light turn on? Done. If it didn't, where can we go from there? Is it the switch? Is it the wiring? Is it a breaker? What caused this? So identifying is just, what is the problem? What am I trying to know? What am I trying to find out? Okay, what do I need to do? Okay. Secondly, we got to plan a strategy. Okay, we got to break it down into steps. Look for patterns. Develop a model. Those are things that you don't think you're doing all the time, but you are. We have an idea of how things work based on experience, and we need to test whether those things are able to solve a problem. So in chemistry and physics, we use a lot of equations, a lot of conversions. We do a lot of variable manipulation. We try and build up and break down different what we call units of measurement to evaluate things. What's the speed? What's the acceleration? What's the density of an object based on what do we know about it? How big is it? How much space does it take up? How much mass does it have? Those are all things that are part of planning a strategy. How can I solve? The next thing is executing that plan. So if I do some sort of experiment, or I do some sort of calculation, that can get me closer to what the answer is. Did the light bulb, was that the problem? Was it a burnout light bulb? Okay. Did I solve for the density? Did I solve for a mass? Did my answer even make sense? Okay. And that's really where the last step comes in, is evaluate. That's the biggest thing. Okay. A lot of students are so wrapped up in trying to just do something that they don't really think about what their answer is. So if I try to multiply numbers or divide numbers, does my answer seem even practical? Is it too big? Is it too small? And then what is the units? Okay, what is the scale of my answer? Okay, if I multiply 2 big numbers, I'm going to get a really big number. If I don't get a really big number, I didn't do a very good job of evaluating. So thinking about those steps, and we'll do this a bunch throughout the year, we can think about these 4 steps: identify, plan, execute, and evaluate.